about the increase and how the suggested increase was, how I came up with that. And I did use data from the CIAC on current structures for the pay for participation, as well as trying to even out the high school and the middle school to get to a single number. Because if we're looking to institute a family cap, it would be helpful that both middle school and high school athletes are paying the same amount. So the family cap is for the whole year, it's not just for a season. The data that I used from the CIAC is the data that I've been given by the athletic director of the most recent study that he had had. And that's those ones, so those are kind of clumped together, so I was studying this. Yes, questions? So,
I got a question. I'm curious on this. At the new budget we have, I think there was a $21,000 increase for athletics, for training or whatnot.
For the trainer.
Trainer, correct. I mean, so what you're saying that none of that money that we get from pay to play can be used to offset the $21,000?
Well, it offsets it in the big bucket. So those revenues will go in there and it'll offset those expenses that are down here. But no, it's not a one-to-one.
I know what you mean by the big bucket, you know, and that's the general fund, but how do we know that somebody don't go into the general fund and grab a big portion of it, and then there's not much left to put towards the 21,000 for the athletic training? You know what I mean? I mean, I know there's no limit. In other words, unless you're standing over there with a big club, and you say, wait a minute, Jack, you're taking too much money. Now, how do you stop too much money going out without clubbing somebody over the head?
I give you these.
Because I'll hold the club.
I give you these wonderful green sheets every month so you can follow the
I got the green
and see where the money's going.
That's your financial controls, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to
That
that.
gets looked at in your audit.
Yes. And by having your monthly expense reports, that is showing you within the revenues coming in, what's happening when and where is that going, and then it does go, the revenues overall offset the whole
But
budget.
if your
That's a
budget-
reasonable point, because I know auditors oftentimes point out that those are the most likely places that, well, Marcia Marion does anyway, the most likely places where people get in trouble with money, that people take money, are from like sports things or PTO things or those things, and that's why they want that those financial controls and things, and that's part of your audit.
PTO doesn't have anything to do with Board of Education. PTOs and booster clubs are their own organizations. We don't control that money.
But she does a whole training. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. She does a whole training. She's with O'Connor Davies, and she's one of the senior accountants, and she does a training on why fiscal safeguards and monetary safeguards are necessary, because it's those funny little things that don't always have as many regulations or compliance. So I think Tom's.
One of the safeguards we have is most of the parents pay directly into a system. So
Yeah, there you
it's not
go.
like in the olden days where the coach
Yeah,
was collecting
there you go.
$200 cash, and then that coach went to the athletic director, gave the money, and then it ended up in accounting. Now a lot of these
Yeah.
funds, these payments are made
Right,
by
right.
the parents through the system,
Yeah.
so the money directly goes into
Yeah.
the accounts.
So we can't go back to the old system, right? Is that what you're saying?
Now
We're
while I'm here.
progressing, we're progressing.
Pardon?
We're progressing.
I said not while I'm here.
Yeah, but you're not going to be here in a little while.
Well, that's.
Does that mean we can change it then? You heard her.
No, her legend lives on.
I'm going to keep an eye on it.
Sorry, Dan?
I just was making an observation. I mean, if the budget gets approved with a figure for a position in athletics, that's the budget that's going to get paid for, right? Regardless if we're able to pay for play for $500,000 or $20. The amount that we're going to pay for that position, the only way that you could pay more is if somehow, some way that there was a reason to pay for more salary expense for a position beyond budget, and at that point, hopefully we're doing our work here, and if there needs to be a change in, or a transfer in accounts to adjust for the salary account, unless you're pushing from one other salary account, but I mean, the position is there, it's funded.
Right.
How much we generate outside of that revenue helps make it more palatable for the
Right,
towns to.
right.
And also, you know, with regards to this green sheet and the way we're showing expenditures and revenue now, like I've always said, the budget, expenditure budget is a projection, just as well as the revenues are a projection. These revenues are all projected. It doesn't, it's not set in stone that we're gonna get this money.
Yeah, right.
So it's, you know, they're both, you know, living, breathing projections, moving projections, correct.
Mr. Gustanian, then Mrs. Shea, Mrs. Rapoli has something to say definitely.
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want a real quick comment that I think a lot of the issues relative to the way the monies are handled are also in our board policy,
Correct.
relative to administrative regulations, school activities, accounting guidelines, procedures. And if you want to look it up, anybody wants to, it's in there.
So on page 13, the pay for participation, that slide that you put in at the bottom, why did you put that in? Like, what was your message that you were trying to get across to us with this slide?
There was
a question.
there was a question around how did I come up with this? What did I use as far as the process goes? And so I used CIAC data and information and looked at family caps, pay for participation numbers, and that information, as well as our own district information, to make a suggestion for where I think we need to go with pay for participation.
Okay, so with that in mind, wouldn't you want to look at what these schools have to offer as well, compared to what RHAM offers for sports programs?
And that's some of that. Some of them have larger programs and some have smaller programs. And there was other ones on the list that don't have any pay for participation, at least based on the 2015 data.
So do you mean like number of trainers and things, or?
I just know that our sports program is not what, other sports programs are. So it's like, it's hard to compare in my mind, because, I don't know what all these schools have to offer. But saying that, Simsbury, you could pick them $175 per sport, so, and they have a family cap of 700, well, what are they offering? Do they have a full-time AD? So I guess, to me, this data doesn't really tell me much.
It was the only data I had around pay for participation. Those were the schools that had that information from the athletic director. So that's what I needed to use.
Okay, we're going to go around and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Mr. Shaw.
I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Shremont, we're back.
Oh, no, already?
Already.
Hey, smile, you're on the camera.
The only, I never like comparisons, to be honest with you. And now, what you got here, and I have to agree with Sue in a way, that you're not mixing apples with oranges. And no offense to people in other towns, but Simsbury, no, I'm not saying,
That's an orange.
Avon, Farmington, some of these towns have a much different tax base than Hebron, Andover, and Marlborough. So you really can't compare that. I mean, they might not have to charge as much to a student's parents, but the tax base is altogether different. You can't not compare. I'm sorry. Any of these figures, I wouldn't even look at them. You can't compare. That's my opinion.
Okay.
But Sims?
Unanticipated expenses, please provide a report showing all the unanticipated expenses from 7-1, and that will be part of the next budget projection. We talked about that in the last board meeting. The 321 deficit, as
included, I'm not sure about this question, so I'm answering it the way that I'm interpreting it. 170 in unanticipated costs for the flooring, et cetera. The flooring for rooms 322 and 323 was $16,000, and that was not anticipated this year. It was a cost that we had not built in. And that is included in that deficit of that projected position of the district of a 321 deficit. If there was another meaning to that question, I might have misinterpreted, but that's how I answered this. And I don't remember who asked the question, so.
So the last financial report that we got at the last meeting, if I'm recalling correctly, there was $170,000 in unanticipated costs.
Correct.
My question is that included in the $321,000 deficit?
Correct, it is.
It is, okay, thank you.
What are some other costs that parents may incur for their child playing middle school, high school sports and paying for parking, clubs, et cetera? Again, I'm trying to interpret the question. Field trips are another expense that parents might have to pay during the year, whether it's part of a club field trip, like a DECA field trip, or kind of common field trip, but a DECA trip, or a health summer trip, or just in general. But the only other expense overall is field trips that would be something that would again come up for kids. So I'm not sure if I'm answering that question. And yeah, Catherine was
Yeah, school supplies, that's what I found out
Okay.
later. School supplies is a pretty big cost.
What is it,
Some kind of testing, AP or ECE or something.
Texas.
Yeah, the AP. This is the testing that's coming up, high school.
Oh, the SATs, the APs,
Scott, Leslie, what's the testing they have to pay for soon?
Well, AP testing.
AP testing.
Yeah.
I did this
It's a
in
fortune.
relation just to
AP testing.
non-academics, so I'm sorry if
I don't know what the question is, but when we're at another.
I can clarify with the person who asked it, they're not here.
You know, though, I think though, at one point, the committee, what is it, clubs and athletics or something, and, was looking at some of this. And, you know, this might be an interesting share just under communication, because parents do end up paying for a lot. And just so maybe some other folks in the community who don't have kids can feel better about that or understand that they do. You know, it might be not a complaining thing, but just a sharing informational, yeah.
The special education's expenses and revenues, that was provided in your weekly update. I made from all the veterans from the year that required that report. You said that again. In this past week's weekly update, I provided all of the reports on special education expenses and revenues since the start of the year. It's the report that they ran, so I provided that.
Thank you very much.
What are the state mandates that you're speaking of regarding increase in professional development? I gave you the long answer on the professional development one. State statute and the number of unfunded mandates and expectations that the legislation has passed over the years has resulted in 106 hours per year or 13 days, full days of professional development expectations that the legislation has passed around seclusion and restraint, around different types of teaching strategies, all different types of professional development. I brought the actual packet with me, I believe, and I can list them all to you. So that was one of the unfunded mandates that I was speaking about. The other one around keeping pieces, in particular the burden of proof for local school districts, that if when parents disagree with an appropriate program for the child, that the burden of proof is totally on the school district, which can be expensive and difficult and push a lot of times to due process hearings, and so that can be expensive as well. And both of those are things that the legislation is aware of, CAPS is aware of, Kate is aware of, and they're all working on this, try to do exit interviews with teachers. We do not have a formal process for that, and it is something that we are looking to move forward, so it's been done consistently. The SRO, asking if we can see monthly update reports from the SRO. I do get monthly update reports, and I do have a quarterly meeting with the SRO and the supervisor. And I could provide a summary of the reports, but because there's enough, I think, identifying information and the reports, and obviously there's no student names in there, but I would have to summarize the activity that's happening within those reports rather than actually sharing those with you. And again, when we take a look at learning more about the value of the position, especially when we're cutting classroom teachers, again, the teacher positions that I am suggesting that we eliminate are based on class sizes, which end up resulting in a savings of money, but they're not being done to save money. They're being done to, I think, respond appropriately to the changing demographics of the school and the number of students we have. The workshop sessions.
I'd like to ask a question.
Sorry?
So you're saying that you feel the SRO is a position that you see value, and that's why it's not being discussed or, you know, looked at being reduced in this 18-19 budget? Or are you know, still need more time to evaluate, to look at it, or do you feel like this is a valued position to keep in the budget?
I think that's something I'd like to come back and discuss further with the board, and I would want to take a look at, because of the specific personnel issue, that we might need to talk about that in executive session to be appropriate.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
The live streaming of the work. No, we're not live streaming.
Not tonight.
For two different reasons. One, we do contract with the students that do the live streaming of the regular board meetings, and we have budgeted for that. But also my understanding is that the equipment doesn't allow us to be able to do that from remote locations.
Just a little bit more, we could do it.
Okay, let me go back and add that.
Go back to the numbers.
Not a problem. My communication strategies right now are going to be to use the website, articles in the paper, superintendent forums. I'm hoping to hold a couple of parent superintendent forums at night for parents to just come and discuss with me the budget and present a smaller version of the budget presentation. As far as also going and presenting at the Board of Finance meetings at the 3 towns, having budget brochures to also allow the board and the public to better understand kind of the short, sweet process of what we're talking about in the budget and all these things are important. I would welcome any other ideas I have.
I think that's all great. I think as much advance notice on the dates that you'll do that, the better, so everyone can plan. And when you say parent and superintendent, you're meeting community.
Community.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so just if we can plan the dates, that would be great, because I think you've covered everything. I don't think there's anything left for you to communicate out to, so thank you.
Last one. I spoke about this earlier.
Sorry, there's one on the back. The SGH contract is not ready, so I cannot share it at this point.
Okay, are there questions about the presentation for